Well, here it is, ladies and gentlemen. The moment we've all been waiting for almost more than a week. I have finally finished playing the Callisto Protocol. I finished it this past Thursday night, and here now I am ready to give you all my review and thoughts on the entirety of the game. I have a whole notebook of notes that I took while I was playing, and so I am ready to dive deep into it. If you could all please as well comment down below your thoughts on the game if you've finished it, or even if you haven't finished it, just let me know what you've been thinking about the game. I would greatly appreciate that, as if you would help stem and build a conversation to have, and also help get this video out to more people. As a little bit of a background for me to start off this video, it is the first new modern single-player driven story game that I've played since Jedi Fallen Order came out in 2019. I've played other games that were much older in that time in terms of story, but when it comes to modern games that are new, this is my first one in almost 3 years, from a single-player perspective. I very much enjoyed that game, and I think here to begin my thoughts, I also very much enjoyed playing the Callisto Protocol as well. I don't play single-player and story-driven games all the time. I'm more of a multiplayer online type of video gamer, but it seems recently single-player games have not disappointed me. The Callisto Protocol is a new experience for me as well, in the sense that I don't ever usually play horror games either, and this was my first true horror game that I've played in a very, very long time. I play a lot of zombies games, and I am very much a zombies kind of guy, more specifically when it comes to a game franchise like Call of Duty anyway, but here we get a mix of both zombie and monster survival with that horror vibe. So again, like I just mentioned, I did enjoy playing the game for the 11.5 hours that I spent on my playthrough. They had mentioned beforehand when the game was coming out that it would be around a 12 to 14 hour game, and so I got right around the minimum. I will also say I don't personally understand how people were able to finish this game in a day, and in some ways I kind of feel that that was rushing it a bit. Like, when I go into a game like this, I don't think of speedrunning it or rushing through it as fast as possible so I could be the first one to get my playthrough out on YouTube. I wanted to take my time with this game as much as possible so that I could give a fair and honest review of it without making it seem like I was brushing past a lot of details. There is a lot of story in and around this game that you can gather just by playing, going through the cutscenes, and even listening through all the different audio recordings, which I have a feeling a lot of people probably just brushed aside and don't pay attention to, which in my opinion is the wrong way to play the game. To be clear, that is not saying that nobody should be able to play a game like that. Anyone can play the game however they like. It's just that when I go into a game like this, you have to play it in a certain way to really take in everything, which is why it took me so long to finish it. And of course, I think it needs to also be said that while I think that this game is good, I do also acknowledge that it has flaws to it, and I don't think it's a flawless game by any means. For a first game under a new studio, I have to say I really do believe that this is a really good game again for a first game under a new studio. When talking about the actual game itself, as far as just a general video game, I just think it was good, but flawed, and we will definitely get into those flaws. So to give credit where credit is due to Glen Schofield and Striking Distance Studios, I think they did a very good job with this game, even with some of the flaws that again we will discuss. So let's start off with those positives that I had and the things that I liked and loved about this game. First and foremost, again, as I mentioned already, I had a good time playing the game. I enjoyed my playthrough. Everything from the combat, to the story that we got, to the characters that we do get to explore, the visuals, and just the overall world of the Callisto Protocol. It is also just such an interesting game as well. There is a lot here to keep you interested and make you wonder and ask questions, which is why I'm very happy that this game didn't go too hard into giving you every detail imaginable. The game feels very simple as well, which is something that I preach and love about all the video games that I've loved in my life. When things are simple in video games, people love it more. It doesn't matter what kind of video game it is, especially also if this is a first game as well with a new story. The next thing that I love so much about this game is the setting and atmosphere. Now, this might be a bit of a bias coming from me because I am somebody who loves space. I've said it before, but everything around my channel is related to space, and space in general is just something that I've loved in all of entertainment, video game, movie, television show, it doesn't matter. I think if you are somebody who is not as much of a fan of space or doesn't care for it as much, this game might not resonate with you than if it was somebody like me. I really love that this game utilizes real moons of Jupiter like Callisto, Ganymede, Europa, these are all real things in our solar system, and to that point I love how they also got down the moon of Callisto to the right amount of detail that is shown through various amount of studies in real life about the moon's surface, its atmosphere, and so on and so forth. Which ultimately segues into my next thing that I love about the game, and that is the attention to detail. You can really tell here that the developers were passionate about making sure that this game felt as authentic as possible and really pulled you into the world. The design of the levels of the prison, to the outside of the moon's surface, to even the biophages, who are just so gross looking and brutal, it all shows that they put a lot of care and effort into it. And that was one of the biggest reasons why I was so excited for this game before it came out. And yes, I have to admit I did get jump scared a bunch of times, so they did do a good job on that as well. The next thing that I love about this game is the photo mode. This is arguably definitely one of the top 3 things that I love about this game the most. This is the type of community and social feature that every game needs, and it works so perfectly with this type of game with how crazy it is. Giving the player an ability to be creative and then also share those photos that they make is such a brilliant idea and something every game needs. I've been criticizing a lot of AAA online shooter games for not doing this anymore, and I think the photo mode in Callisto Protocol should be a fine example of why you need it in there. I think my only critique that I would give the photo mode is that I wish there was a way to save the photos in the game that you take instead of only just saving it on your console or PC. For me, since I am on Xbox, I have to save it to the Xbox directly instead of the actual game, so that would be the one thing that I would add into that photo mode to make it complete. The next thing that I ended up liking were the characters and the mini story each one of them had to tell. Josh Duhamel as Jacob Lee is good here. Overall, there is not much to his character, and he simply is just a man who gets caught in a really bad situation at the beginning of the game and is forced after that to just survive and get out of Callisto as fast as possible, while also uncovering the mysteries behind everything that happened there. Karen Fukuhara as Dani Nakamura is fantastic. She was great here, not just from an acting standpoint, but also her character has a lot to tell. Once you learn everything about her as the story goes on, you start to really side with her, especially since going into the game, we knew that she was a part of a very questionable group of people, but in the end you learned a lot more about her that makes you really side with her motivations. Sam Witwer as Captain Leon Ferris was also a standout for sure, and no surprise, Sam plays the character very well, and seeing what he ultimately ends up turning out to be in the end of the game was definitely a surprise and a shock to me. I had a theory before the game came out about what would happen to him, and I was so far off to the point where I was just so shocked, as I just said. And of course, finally, there are a few other characters played by several actors that I am not familiar with that are all good in the game as well and did a good job, from Dr. Caitlin Muller to Warden Duncan Cole, who plays a really terrible human being based on all the decisions that he makes, and also his voice alone is very menacing. The character of Elias Porter was also very well done, and maybe the biggest surprise for me in the cast. I thought his character had a lot of depth to him, and also he was just very well acted to the point where I really connected with him as a person when you move forward with the story as he helps Jacob try to escape. The weapons and equipment also brought a lot of really cool and interesting combat scenarios. The grip glove that allows you to basically use the force and pick up a biophage and throw them at the wall or at a trap is one of the most satisfying things to do in the game, which funny enough is kind of cool considering Sam Witwer, who plays Captain Leon Ferris, is in a lot of different Star Wars projects where he plays a force user, and I don't know if that was done intentionally, but it's just something that I noticed. The baton is also a really cool weapon, and the guns themselves, from the riot shotgun to the assault rifle that you get, are just really satisfying to use. Ultimately, when you get to the end of the game, the assault rifle is the only gun that you want to use, but ammo is a resource that you use up a lot, and so it's really cool that it makes you switch back and forth between weapons enough to where there's an equal use of each. Now, finally, in case I missed anything else, of course we do have to touch on the story of the game, which I'll say for the most part I did like, but I didn't love it. I think the thing again for me that I like a lot about the story is that it was just very simple. Of course, there is a lot that you can learn and find out outside of playing the game, but even in-game there's a lot to tell as well. The way the story is told through the cutscenes, the dialogue, but also the voice recordings that you pick up along the way that give you a bio of many different characters and the experiences that they tell you that about what is going on and what had happened throughout the way while the outbreak was happening in the prison. I just like that there are many different ways that you can pick up on all the plot lines and details, and it's not just through cutscenes. I certainly hope that the story DLC that we get in the summer of next year helps expand on a lot of different pieces of lore, as well as around the main story, whether it be a prequel DLC or a sequel DLC that takes place after the end of the game. Of course, if you know the ending of the game and what happens, there is most certainly a story to tell after, and that is where I'm going to assume that they will go, but time will tell in the future as we learn more details. And speaking of the ending, the boss fight I thought was just okay. I didn't think it was like amazing or bad or anything, it was just an alright boss fight. Again, with what you had to work with, it made sense why it was the way it was. Now, of course, as I mentioned in the beginning, while I think the game is good, I also feel it is a flawed game, and now I would like to get into those flaws. Starting with the first one, which is definitely the most apparent out of them all, and a massive issue that I would say everyone has noticed, and it has to do with the performance issues. Now, to be clear, I, and like everybody else, probably had a different experience based on what kind of performance issues that we were experiencing. For me, I played the game on my Xbox One S, which of course is old hardware at this point, and I had a fair share of issues. I will also say that it is my fault for not upgrading to the Series S or X sooner because the graphics were just not good here on the One S. That's not the fault of the game, that is simply the fault of the console that it was allocated to, but I digress. I did not play on the PC, which of course is where I know most of the performance issues were happening for people who play on there. One of those issues was stuttering, and I did find myself getting a lot of that, in particular, specifically in combat situations. There would be times where I am fighting at biophage, when an action is being committed, my audio would just start stuttering all over the place, and even to an extent my gameplay as well. It didn't ruin the moment per se, even if it did happen a bunch of times, I just wish it wasn't there in the first place. There were also times where I would have frame rate drops and lag during transitions into a checkpoint, or while I was doing an action of a mantle or crawling through a vent. Again, wasn't super annoying, but at the same time I wish it wasn't there in the first place. And in fairness though, I will say I have really loved, and this is something else that I have loved, that doesn't necessarily have to do with the game, but the studio itself, and that is how on top of the situation they are with regards to fixing it and putting out patches. That is the kind of transparency and communication I love from studios, is making sure we are all up to date on fixes. So great job Striking Distance Studios, I love that so much, keep it up. The next flaw that I have for the game has to do with some of the design of certain levels throughout the different places that you travel to. And I'm sure some of you might have noticed this, but lots of times when I am walking around hallways and I come across a new hallway that opens up for me to go down and it leads to nowhere with no loot at all, and it's just a dead-end hallway or room filled with nothing at times, it did annoy me a little bit. This happened a bunch, and I just feel if you are going to put a layer into an area that you are walking around, it should have a meaning to it, whether that have to be loot or it leads to a part of the story. It just felt like a very random and unnecessary amount of structure that was designed into the game that could have been cut out or cut down. And to be clear, I don't know if there is a reason for this, but it's just something I noticed that just felt very unnecessary. My next flaw does have to do with the weapons. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying all the weapons. I did mention that there were some that I loved at the beginning. I am only talking about certain guns, and also the idea around taking out your weapons and putting them away. I think this game could have done without the skunk shotgun and the tactical pistol. I think the other guns are far better to use and pack a better punch. They just feel unnecessary to have in your inventory, and at the same time, in particular, when you are fighting an enemy that is very difficult, such as the rushers, a gun like the skunk shotgun is just not good against them. The tactical pistol is very weak, and it feels like something that you would only use just in case you ran out of ammo with all your other guns. At the same time, I felt the system of how you take out your weapon and put away your weapon, no matter if it's a gun or your baton, it felt annoying that it would put it away for you. I know that can be a little bit of a nitpick, and to some degree it is. It just feels like I should be the one to control that, whether or not I put my weapon away, or my gun, or my baton. Another flaw that I noticed, and it's not something that is any fault at all to the actors, but it has to do with the direction of the game. I felt at times when there was a scene that really needed to hit the emotional beat of a plot point or a character having in a moment of dialogue, it felt like they didn't go to the extent that they should have. Again, that is not to the fault of the actors, everyone did a really good job. It's just felt like from a direction standpoint, you could have added in just a little more to really sell certain scenes and interactions between the characters. The direction overall is decent, but I just felt like those scenes could have added a little bit more to them. Admittedly as well, I did also feel that the pacing on the game felt a little slow in certain parts and could have picked it up a little bit, but it wasn't too noticeable to the point where it was boring or a slog to get through. I do also have some flaws with the settings and options in the game that I feel could be tweaked a little bit. With the gameplay settings here, I find it a little weird that for the aim and look sensitivity, it is basically the best way to just go and put it up to the max of 100 like I did. I am not really sure why there would be an option to go all the way down to 0 and not be able to aim at all. It's just a little weird to me that that is an option. Also, the character skin option, for some reason, I never got my Twitch skin, which is basically where you had to watch 30 minutes of somebody streaming the game on Twitch, and I was able to connect my account to craft an ID, and I never ended up getting my skin. On top of that, for some reason, when you choose to pick the other skin that you get, which is the Retro Prisoner one, every time you log off the game and come back on the next day, it changes back the skin for you. Again, just a little tweak that I would change, and it's just more of a nitpick that I noticed. With regards to the inventory system and the Reforge that you constantly use throughout playing to help sell resources and buy upgrades, I feel as though, again, this probably could have been cut down a little bit. I ended up finishing the game without upgrading everything fully. I think I was only able to upgrade 2 to 3 guns, and I got pretty close to fully upgrading my grip glove and my baton. Unfortunately though, I just didn't have enough Callisto credits by the end of the game to really even remotely get close to upgrading everything. Now, if I'm correct, I assume one of the 26 achievements of the game is that you have to upgrade everything fully, and I'm really curious to know how some people managed to do it, since I have heard that some have gotten the ability to upgrade everything. Of course, it all comes down to how you allocate resources and making hard choices to leave things out or just sell everything you own. I do feel as though there probably could have been times, especially as you got near the end of the game, that the amount of Callisto credits that you pick up increases exponentially. And again, that could also just have to do with the fact that there were so many upgrades that you had to get to fully max out your equipment and guns. Just a little thing that I noticed. I'm sure some people will probably be different with each other on that, but it makes for good discussion. And also finally, to touch on the length of the game, which I know has been a hot topic amongst a lot of people, I think for me this doesn't even really come down to as a flaw or critique of the game, but something that I wouldn't have minded if it was longer or the same runtime as it is now. Sure, would I have liked a longer game? Absolutely. Do I think the runtime for what we got was good? Yeah, in some cases I think it was. I don't think this game was trying to be something huge, especially for a first game under this studio. This game just really feels like a simple passion project that the studio really wanted to put all the time and effort into. I of course can't get into the whole, oh, how does this compare with the Dead Space games debate, considering again I've never played those games other than the third one for a little bit. To me, this game was just a mix of horror survival along with some good action along the way. And yes, I know there's also the whole discussion behind whether or not the new Game Plus edition should have been in the game in the first place to allow for more replayability, and again, yes, that probably would have been a better move to have included that in at the start. I'm sure there are a lot of people who want to really replay this game in different ways. Since currently the only way you can replay the game right now is if you, after you played it on your first run on, let's say, minimum difficulty, you're probably just going to want to go and play on maximum difficulty right after. There would be no point to playing either medium or minimum depending on which one you started with. I will also say too, I had somebody reach out to me through the comments in one of my videos talking about how journalists and YouTubers and streamers who played the game were very harsh on it, and I'm not here to get involved in any drama, but I did see some people making some critiques of the game that didn't really sit right with me after the first couple of days of release. And also, I'll say this now, but if you see somebody put out a review of a video game the day that it released, do not trust that review and don't take it with any grain of salt. I saw people doing that with the most recent Call of Duty game, Modern Warfare 2, and I even saw people do it here with this game as well. I won't name names, but one review I saw that was released the day of got disliked a whole lot, and I can only imagine why. This is why for me I wanted to make sure that I took my time as much as possible with this game to give my fair and honest review of it, to make sure I soaked everything in and didn't rush through it. I definitely do feel there is this thing with people who play games that they rush through the game as fast as possible after the first couple of days and don't really let it gel with them. This is a game that I feel you absolutely have to take your time with while soaking in the atmosphere of what the game is trying to go for. And again, for a first time game for a new studio, I think they really did a good job. Again, I think it has many flaws to it, but in the end, it is a good experience with so much potential for more to come in the future, whether that be for DLC or for a new game in the future. For me, I still plan to put out more videos around this game because I am that interested in the lore of everything and I like talking about a game that I enjoy. I might even also plan to go through a maximum difficulty playthrough at some point while I wait for the new content to release in February. At the same time, we also have the remake of the original Dead Space coming at the end of January, so I might even go and give myself a playthrough of the original Dead Space so that when the new one comes out, I can play that and see if there were any differences or maybe make content around it for any new players to the franchise. But I think that is going to do it for my review and honest thoughts of the Callisto Protocol, everyone. I wanted to make sure again that I covered everything as much as possible, and if I missed anything, be sure to let me know. I really do hope you all enjoyed this video, as it not only took me a long time to make over the weekend, but this one had been a long time coming, especially after so much of the support that I received over the last week or so around making videos on this game. All your support along the journey has been so appreciated, and I can't thank you all enough for that. I'm hoping that this video does well, and I would very much appreciate if you all could comment down below your thoughts and like the video so we can get it to spread out to more people. Let me know what you thought about the game, if you've fully played through it or if you were nearing the end of your journey on your playthroughs. I would love to have so many conversations with you all in the comments about your thoughts and feelings, and of course please keep it respectful as possible. If we can agree and disagree respectfully with different opinions, that is all good to see. I hope you all have a great week. Be safe. More Callisto Protocol videos to come. This is Orion, and I'm signing out.